In the pitch-black hours of 1631, piercing cries jolted 237 villagers awake in the remote Irish settlement of Baltimore. Raiders from distant African shores burst through their homes, hauling out terrified families, husbands, wives, youngsters binding them, amid the flames devouring their dwellings. By the time dawn broke, the entire group was aboard vessels bound for distant Algiers. One among them, a youthful local called Anne Whitaker, had scarcely ventured beyond her community's borders, utterly unprepared for invaders from an unseen realm to snatch her under cover of darkness. As FX, echoing screams, after nearly a month at sea, Anne found herself perched on a raised stage in an Algiers trading hub for human cargo. Prospective purchasers prowled around her, assessing her as if she were mere chattel ready for barter. They prodded her limbs, traced her form with intrusive grips, appraising her value coldly, for in that moment, she had become nothing more than an asset. Her price equated to roughly 7 cattle, barely matching a sturdy mule's worth. Yet Anne's ordeal was far from unique. From 1530 through 1780, more than 1 million individuals from across Europe fell victim to abduction and auction in regions of North Africa under Ottoman influence. Victims hailed from Spain, Italy, France, and even remote locales like Iceland or islands' edges. This narrative is one that much of Europe has chosen to bury deep. Acknowledging it would force recognition that for a quarter millennium, the vast Mediterranean became a grim arena where people from the continent turned into commodities for trade. But the fate awaiting female captives within those secluded enclaves, that's the detail history shuns the most. If this is your first visit, make sure to subscribe and tap that like icon. Our channel digs into the harsh realities that time tried to conceal. Shoot to brawl, ancient maps of Mediterranean. To grasp the horrors endured by Anne and countless others, it's essential to identify their abductors. These Barbary corsairs weren't mere outlaws acting on whims. They functioned as government-endorsed hunters based out of key ports like Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, and Sale. The sprawling Ottoman realm provided direct support, with each traded captive generating fiscal gains for the ruling sultan. This operation transcended simple banditry. It formed a structured enterprise. Their armadas ventured toward Europe's shores, often in groups exceeding 24 sails. Strikes occurred under night's veil or at first light, catching settlements off guard without defenses. Loot included precious metals, provisions, valuables, yet the prime objective remained human quarry. Why? Because individuals could be traded repeatedly, yielding ongoing profits. Pause and reflect. To these raiders, a person represented not a soul, but a profitable venture, an endlessly exploitable commodity to seize, market, exhaust, and remarket until depleted entirely. MC1. In 1627, their reach extended to Iceland's icy frontiers, Europe's farthest northern outpost. There they seized 400 souls from isles barely known to mainlanders. Picture yourself as a simple herder in Iceland, roused by unfamiliar voices in Arabic, shattering your entrance from lands you'd never conceived, let alone located. Zoom in, dramatic reenactment of icy landscape. During 1544, the notorious leader Harem Barbarossa targeted Italy's seaboard, netting 7,000 prisoners over one season alone. 7,000, that's no minor skirmish. It's a systematic gathering of lives. A decade later in 1554, assailants descended on Spain's Vieste, carting off 6,000 inhabitants overnight, leaving the place desolate. Such incursions weren't haphazard. They constituted planned campaigns with deliberate focuses, prioritizing youthful females and kids for their premium market values. Can you envision residing along Spain's or Italy's shores back then? Each evening, drifting to sleep with the nagging dread. Might this be the moment alarms sound? Would morning find you shackled en route to an alien existence? For 2.5 centuries, that uncertainty defined daily reality. Whole seaside communities vanished as inhabitants fled to safer interiors, distancing themselves from marauders' grasp. Sentinel structures dotted every coastal stretch around the Mediterranean to detect approaching fleets. Religious sites tolled alerts upon sightings, though signals often proved futile. The assailants evolved tactics, scouting vulnerable spots, compensating informants among locals for intel, timing assaults during tempests that grounded fishing fleets. Then, they pounced without mercy. Certain Europeans, dubbed turncoats, even defected to join ranks. Familiar with continental tongues, traditions, and vulnerabilities, they guided operations effectively. A prominent example involved a Dutch seafarer known as Jack the Mariner, who flipped allegiances to amass fortunes among Algiers' elite hunters. He alone ensnared thousands from his homeland, funneling them into auctions. Wealth trumped all borders, kinships dissolved before profits allure, and profits abounded immensely. Allow me to share details on another captive, Elena Vos, a 22-year-old from the Netherlands taken in 1731 aboard a trading craft off Spain's waters. Attackers swarmed the boat at daybreak, discarding males past middle age as valueless for toil or trade, consigning them to ocean depths. Youthful males got restraints, females, everyone, faced bonds too. The craft then veered southward. Elena endured 17 grueling days confined below decks with dozens of fellow women. Space constricted so severely, reclining proved impossible. They huddled together in utter blackness. Odors overwhelmed, sickness, waste, raw terror permeating air. No illumination, no ventilation, only hull groans mingled with sobs in foreign dialects. Deaths claimed some en route, corpses released from irons, hauled topside. Elena tallied 7 watery disposals over that span 7, who perished without sighting shore again. A neighbor ceased meals by day 3, fluids by 5, lifeless by 8. Elena remained fastened beside the remains for agonizing hours till overseers intervened. Upon docking in Algiers, they hoisted her into blinding daylight after fortnight's absence. Sunbeams stabbed like daggers at her sight. As clarity returned, gleaming pale fortifications of the city emerged first, followed swiftly by the bustling exchange for bondspeople. MC2 procedures unfolded with ruthless precision. New arrivals herded to communal cleansings, scrubbed clean, injuries patched minimally to ensure survival till transaction. Sorting ensued akin to livestock grading. Robust youths assigned to grueling tasks or oar benches, propelling vessels till collapse. Typical oarsmen survived mere half-decades, immobilized in chains, sustained sparsely for continued effort. Learned individuals fetched premiums as educators or artisans prized, somewhat kinder fates, yet enslaved nonetheless. Youngsters groomed for household duties, occasionally the very young indoctrinated into differing beliefs, maturing oblivious to origins or true identities. Mature females past 35 slotted into menial roles, meal prep, upkeep, unseen drudgery in affluent abodes. However, prime assets were adolescent to young adult women, aged 15 to 30, commanding top bids market-wide. Their path led to private quarters of elite. Prior to bidding, scrutiny intensified. Females positioned on central dais, encircled by evaluators. Probes tested muscle tone, dental health, dermal condition for flaws or ailments. In hubs like Algiers and Tunis, displays bared all, concealing naught from prying gazers. Patrons handled freely, exploring as desired. A cleric from France, Father Louis Moreau, labored in 1634, redeeming faithful detainees in Algiers. His records captured market spectacles. Faithful females exhibited openly in plazas, probed as beasts. Touch extended comprehensively for quality assurance. Tears flowed from the young, but defiance invited swift lashes till submission sank in. Such scenes played publicly midday amid crowd sanction normalized entirely. Envision Anne Whitaker atop that stand, from her quaint Irish hamlet where faces were familiar, concerns limited to crop yields, untouched intimately till then. Now aliens in incomprehensible speech poured her, gauging market price. Sold ultimately to a merchant from Turkey named Karim for 7 cattle's equivalent. Clueless to implications, unaware Karim held 6 prior acquisitions, oblivious her former existence had evaporated. USFX, auction gaffle. The trek from Algiers to Constantinople spanned 6 weeks. Anne confined anew below, alongside 24 continental females mix of origins, no shared tongue with her. Words failed, but dread transcended barriers. All sensed impending trials. Veterans gestured warnings, pantomiming unspeakable futures. Arrival brought direct escort to Karim's residence. Fellow bondspeople stripped her of homeland garb, incinerating it, erasing remnants of past. Cleansed in scented baths, clad in regional attire, she appeared alien to herself. That evening, Karim entered her chamber. Anne knew no intimacy prior, no solitude with unrelated males. Village norms reserved such for wedlock with chosen partners sharing culture and name. Karim lacked a language unnecessary for his intent. Decades on, and dispatched correspondence homeward, rare survivor testimony from Irish origins. Therein she conveyed indescribable anguish that initial eve, yearning demise repeatedly, yet it evaded. Subsequent nights mirrored the first. Such defined those secluded spaces, not opulent lounges or aromatic oases, not idealized canvases by uninformed artists, not lavish escapes, rather imprisonment, compelled yielding, endurance amid mental agony of perpetual entrapment. No saviors approached, no forces mobilized for liberation, no prospects of homeland reunion, just interminable stretches blending into errors. Hem C3. Some captives fractured mentally, howling at voids, conversing with phantoms. Peers subdued them till fatigue claimed. Unmanageables vanished or resold. Others crafted internal havens, daily patterns, minor ceremonies structuring chaos. Recollections of native melodies, familial dishes, patter of precipitation on roof scotches at former selves. Yet majority dulled sensations, numbness eased burdens. Existence as bonds varied by possessor, though common threads persisted. Foremost, persistent urgings toward faith shift for all of Christian heritage. Adoption didn't grant liberty ownership, endured but marginally elevated position indoors. Holdouts faced repercussions, floggings, starvation, solitary confinement in shadows for weeks. Next, mandatory acquisition of prevailing dialect, be it Turkish or Arabic per locale. Swift learners garnered minor leniencies. Laggards labeled defiant, enduring harsher corrections till compliance or shatter. Critically, no captive from Europe held juridical standing. Testimony invalid, possessions forbidden, refusals impossible, exits barred sans approval. Legally, an item equivalent to furnishings, devoid rights. Trajectories typically branch three ways: harsh servitude, sanitation, cuisine, offspring oversight, endless shifts sans respite. Penalties for trifles. Scorched fare invited strikes. Shattered ware, fasting. Seldom outdoors, they withered prematurely. Useless, offloaded cheaply, or discarded streetward, concubinage formed the second grim path. For those deemed desirable in youth and appearance, owners exercised unrestricted access at whim. In prosperous residences, several such women coexisted, buying subtly for favor, gifts, or preferential standing. Bearing a male heir occasionally elevated one's position, perhaps lighter duties, modest privileges, or even a degree of influence within the household. Female offspring carried less weight, offering minimal leverage. Repeated failure to produce desired results often led to demotion back to menial tasks, or outright resale to lesser households. The third and perhaps most relentless cycle involved repeated transactions. Numerous captives changed hands several times across their lifetimes, 5, 6, occasionally 10 or more sales. Each transfer inflicted fresh trauma, another exposed evaluation in the marketplace, another set of unfamiliar rules, another master with distinct expectations and potential cruelties to navigate. Survival demanded rapid adaptation to shifting dynamics, learning anew how to endure, placate, or simply endure unnoticed. Han C4, yet one endpoint inspired the deepest dread among all captives: selection for the grand imperial complex within the Sultan's Topkapi Palace in Constantinople. This wasn't merely a residence, but an enormous walled city unto itself. Hundreds of chambers, lush courtyards, steaming bathhouses, expansive kitchens, manicured gardens. At its height, it housed anywhere from 500 to over 1,000 women, all classified as royal property. The majority originated from Circassian or Georgian regions in the Caucasus, long regarded by Ottoman tastes as epitomes of beauty. Europeans appeared rarely, prized as exotic novelties commanding exceptional prices. Gaining entry required exceptional attributes, striking features, extreme youth, typically 12 to 18, and surviving an unforgiving betting sequence. Agents dispatched by the palace scoured major trading centers empire-wide, purchasing prime candidates, then transporting them for further rigorous assessment. Examinations proved even more invasive than public auctions. Detailed physical checks, evaluations of disposition, intellect, vitality, capacity to charm and entertain. Most failed these final hurdles and were redirected to private buyers. Only a tiny fraction earned acceptance into the inner sanctum. GT2 ball, ornate palace interiors, veiled figures, once admitted, intensive preparation commenced, spanning several years. Novices mastered Turkish fluency, courtly manners, instrumental performance, rhythmic dance, intricate needlework, elegant script. They received instruction in graceful posture, modulated speech, subtle eye contact, demure withdrawal, everything crafted to mold them into sophisticated attendants suitable for imperial notice. Yet the harsh reality dismantles every romanticized notion peddled by distant European painters who never witnessed the place firsthand. Of those 500 to 1,000 residents, merely a small cohort, perhaps 50 to 100, ever received personal summons from the Sultan. And among even that select group, only a handful, 5 to 10 across an entire generation, actually shared his private quarters overnight. The overwhelming remainder lingered in indefinite suspension, neither liberated nor fulfilling the role for which they'd been acquired. They passed years, frequently decades, in luxurious yet confining apartments, observing their allure diminish with time, fully aware each passing season eroded their already slim prospects. When a reigning sultan passed, those who had borne no children to him transferred to the old palace, a separate, more austere compound. There they remained sequestered for life, no departure, no unions, no offspring, simply existing behind high walls until mortality claimed them. Official ledgers reference one such European captive, recorded simply as Isabella. She entered around 1650 at age 15 and remained until her death in 1702 at 67-52 years confined within those precincts. Never once did she encounter the Sultan personally. Never did she step beyond the complex boundaries. For over half a century, her sole role consisted of attending women ranked higher. Upon passing, burial occurred in the designated cemetery for palace servants. Her marker bore no name, only a sequential identifier. Administrative entries reduced her to Slave 911. Origin, Frankish. Status, deceased. Cause, senility after prolonged service. Reduced to a digit and brief notation that encapsulated existence inside the imperial enclosure, not empowerment or splendor, but an opulent cage where countless vanished, leaving behind nothing except entries in dusty registers. MC5. So how could such systematic predation persist unchecked across 250 years? The explanation shames the continent profoundly. Europe stood fragmented and vulnerable. Sectarian conflicts pitting Catholics against Protestants drained treasuries, armies, attention. Nations rarely united against a common maritime menace because energies focused inward on mutual destruction. Certain powers, Venice foremost, followed by France, nurtured lucrative commercial pacts with Ottoman authorities. Risking those advantageous ties over abducted villagers or mariners seemed imprudent to their leaders. Meanwhile, some Europeans actively benefited from the arrangement. Defectors served aboard corsair vessels, amassing personal fortunes. Traders exchanged merchandise with North African ports irrespective of cargo origins. A specialized business emerged around negotiating freedom payments. Yet the ransom apparatus proved sluggish, tangled in red tape and heavily biased toward affluent families. A merchant's prosperous daughter might secure release within months. A humble sailor's spouse could wait indefinitely. Most did. Zooming in faded ransom letters, Elena Voss numbered among the fortunate minority. After 8 years of servitude, her relatives liquidated every possession to amass the demanded sum 200 gold guilders, an astronomical figure for modest folk. Released in 1739, she sailed back to the Netherlands. A rival brought shattering revelations. Her betrothed had wed another during her absence. Grief claimed her mother 2 years post-capture. Her father, bankrupted by the effort, lived in reduced circumstances. Worst of all, her own community shunned her. Whispers branded her tainted, sullied assumptions about injured violations clung regardless of truth. Marriage prospects evaporated. Respectable suitors recoiled. Elena spent remaining years solitary, earning meager wages as a needleworker. In preserved personal writings held in Dutch repositories, she confided a heartbreaking preference. She would have chosen to perish in bondage rather than face this ostracism. At least captivity kept humiliation concealed. Home exposed it ceaselessly and unforgivingly. C6. Only in the early 19th century did meaningful intervention arrive. French naval forces bombarded corsair strongholds repeatedly. In 1830, full-scale occupation of Algiers dismantled the regime permanently. By then, however, the toll exceeded 1 million abducted Europeans. Vast majority never returned, lost to time, unmarked graves, forgotten lineages. Anne Whitaker endured decades in confinement. When eventual liberation came, she attempted journey back to Ireland. Yet Baltimore lay in ruins, homes razed, families scattered or deceased, village essence extinguished. Relatives in Ireland clung to uncertainty for years. Church records listed her name weekly among petitions for missing captives. Sunday after Sunday, her identity echoed through pews. No reply ever came. In time, recitations ceased. She faded from collective memory. This account transcends individual tragedies of Anne, Elena, Isabella, or thousands unnamed. It chronicles the systematic theft of over 1 million European lives, predominantly women, through an institutionalized network of abduction and commerce that flourished openly for centuries. Ireland's southern coastline still carries echoes of that 1631 terror. Istanbul's archives preserve countless entries documenting the vanished, and through this telling, their stories resurface. Every society harbors shadowed episodes like these, accounts suppressed, awaiting rediscovery. Which regions concealed past should we illuminate next? Share your thoughts below. If this resonated, please hit like to help spread these recovered truths, and subscribe to The Historian Fact for more unfiltered dives into history's darkest corners. Your support keeps these forgotten voices alive. The psychological toll proved as devastating as any physical hardship. Many women, stripped of identity, family, language, and future, retreated inward. Some clung fiercely to fragments of their former selves, whispering childhood prayers in fading dialects, mentally rehearsing familiar faces and voices, imagining conversations that would never occur again. These small acts of remembrance became lifelines against complete erasure. Others surrendered to a protective numbness, shutting down emotion to blunt the constant pain of violation and loss. MC7. In households where owners showed sporadic kindness, perhaps a rare word of praise, an extra portion of food, or permission to rest the captives, sometimes formed fragile bonds with fellow slaves. These connections offered fleeting comfort, shared glances of understanding, quiet stories exchanged in broken phrases, mutual aid during illness or punishment. Yet such alliances remained precarious. One capricious decision by the master could separate them forever through resale or reassignment. Children born into captivity faced their own unique tragedies. If fathered by the owner, they might receive preferential treatment, education, better clothing, eventual manumission in rare cases. More often, especially daughters, they inherited their mother's status as property, destined for the same markets or domestic roles. Some youngsters, taken very young, forgot their European origins entirely, growing up fluent in Turkish or Arabic, identifying fully with their new surroundings. They became strangers to the lands and people who once claimed them. Shoot to brawl, shadowed courtyards, veiled women walking. Resistance, when it occurred, took subtle forms. A few women deliberately slowed their work, feigned illness, or sabotaged minor tasks, small rebellions that invited punishment, but preserved a shred of inner autonomy. Open defiance almost always ended badly: severe beatings, solitary confinement, or transfer to harsher owners. Escape attempts were extraordinarily rare and almost invariably doomed. The geography alone posed insurmountable barriers: vast deserts, hostile seas, unfamiliar languages, and constant surveillance. Those who tried usually faced recapture, public flogging as warning to others, or execution in extreme cases. The few documented successes involved extraordinary luck, sympathetic allies, or enormous ransoms paid by distant relatives or charitable orders dedicated to redeeming captives. MC8. Religious orders such as the Trinitarians and Mercedarians operated across Europe specifically to collect alms for freeing Christian slaves. They negotiated directly with corsair authorities, sometimes traveling to North Africa to oversee exchanges. Their efforts rescued thousands over the centuries, though the numbers pale beside the total abducted. These friars documented conditions in vivid detail, providing some of the most reliable eyewitness accounts that survive today. Their reports describe markets where women stood trembling on platforms, eyes downcast, while buyers haggled over their futures. They recount the despair of families left behind, parents who never stopped searching, siblings who grew up hearing only rumors of lost loved ones. The economic impact on coastal Europe was profound. Fishing fleets shrank as mariners feared venturing far from shore. Trade routes shifted inland or hugged fortified harbors. Entire regions depopulated as families relocated to safer valleys and hills. Watchtowers, signal fires, and fortified villages became permanent features of Mediterranean life for generations. Zoom in ancient coastal watchtower ruins. Ironically, the very success of the corsair system sowed seeds of its eventual destruction. As European naval technology advanced in the 18th century, faster ships, heavier cannon, better navigation, the balance of power began to tilt. States that once paid annual tribute to avoid raids gradually refused. Britain, France, and later the young United States sent squadrons to bombard Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli. The decisive blow came in 1830 when French forces occupied Algiers, toppling the Dey and ending 3 centuries of corsair dominance. By then, the practice had already declined sharply, victim to changing geopolitics, declining Ottoman authority, and growing European unity against the threat. Yet the human cost lingered long after the last raid. Descendants of captives sometimes discovered their ancestry generations later through scattered letters, church records, or family legends. Most stories simply vanished, erased by time, shame, or the sheer scale of loss. C9. Today, historians continue piecing together this forgotten chapter. Archives in Istanbul, Algiers, Malta, and various European capitals hold fragments, slave registers listing names, ages, origins, purchase prices, ransom petitions from desperate families, traveler accounts describing markets and harems, even rare letters smuggled home by captives who learned to write in their new languages. These documents reveal not just numbers but individual lives, women who laughed at remembered jokes, sang half-forgotten lullabies to comfort others, dreamed of fields or streets they would never see again. Their endurance, in the face of unimaginable cruelty, stands as testament to human resilience. The Barbary slave trade reminds us that history's darkest episodes often involve ordinary people caught in systems far larger than themselves. It challenges romanticized views of exotic pasts and forces honest reckoning with uncomfortable truths. No civilization holds a monopoly on suffering or wrongdoing. Every shore has known both victim and perpetrator. Haas FX, Distant Bell Tolling, Anne Whitaker, Elena Voss, Isabella, and the countless unnamed others deserve to be remembered, not as statistics, but as people whose lives mattered. Their stories, though painful, illuminate corners of the past we must not allow to remain in shadow. Thank you for joining me on this journey through a chapter Europe long preferred to forget. If these recovered truths moved you, please show your support by hitting that like button. It helps these important stories reach more viewers. Subscribe to the History in Fact and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into history's hidden realities. Drop a comment: which dark chapter of the past should we uncover next? Your suggestions guide our future videos. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, the past is never as distant as it seems.